back to a brand new episode of Virtual Coffee. My name is Alexa Collier, and on this podcast, we showcase small businesses from around the world. Now, with me today is Molly Goldston, the founder and owner of Saving Grace. Saving Grace is a nonprofit located here in the Wake Forest, North Carolina area. It's where I'm located. And I know about Saving Grace from being here locally, being by them, seeing them at markets, on social media, things like that. So Saving Grace accepts dogs from local shelters and helps adopt them out. They'll feed, medicate, play with, and just overall ensure the dog is loved and safe on the Saving Grace farm or in a foster home before it finds its forever home. Now, Molly and I had a lot to talk about, and we didn't even get to it all in this episode. She shares why she started Saving Grace, how their process works, and ways you can support the dogs that they save. This episode is near and dear to my heart. I'm a huge dog lover. We have 2 rescue dogs. My family always grew up rescuing and adopting dogs. So I really loved having the chance to talk to Molly and overall just showcasing and bringing awareness to Saving Grace. So before we hear from Molly, you can of course find Virtual Coffee on all social media platforms. It's all at Virtual Coffee Podcast. We'd also appreciate if you can rate and review Virtual Coffee on Apple Podcast or on Spotify. It just helps others discover the podcast and then discover and support the small businesses that we feature. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. And without further ado, let's hear from Molly. Welcome, Molly. Thanks for being on Virtual Coffee.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. I am a huge dog person, always have been. I'm familiar with Saving Grace since I live in the Wake Forest area here in North Carolina. So thank you so much for being on. This will be really fun for me. So just to get started, would love for you to just briefly introduce yourself and Saving Grace, kind of give us the 101 for our audience, and then we can dig in from there.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me. So I started Saving Grace in 2004. So we started really small right here in Wake Forest, Raleigh area. And I had been working in an animal sheltering in the Wake County area right after I got out of college. So I had my eyes really open to sheltering, what sheltering is like, especially in North Carolina. So we are the second state in the United States leading euthanasia for pet animals over population. So I just really had no idea until I started working in it how many great adoptable animals we euthanize every year. And that's gotten a lot better over the years, but certainly we still have a long ways to go. But I saw that the adoption experience wasn't really an easy, welcoming, great experience. 20 years ago, it's come a long ways, but there's still so many dogs, like in the rural areas, especially in our state, that nobody really sees. So I wanted to get those dogs out and in areas where they could be seen, where there's more people that are looking for companions, more populated areas and areas where there's a lot more volunteers, there's spay neuter is accessible, and really give people kind of a different adoption experience. So when you come to Saving Grace, a lot of the dogs are outside, they're together, they're in play groups. It's different than going to a shelter that's just, chain link and different kennels. And sometimes it's hard for people to get to know a dog in that situation. So at Saving Grace, they really get to be out and about. And it's a good way to visit with dogs and really choose a dog on who you connect with and see them in their natural personality and their natural environment. So it's a little easier for adopters to choose.
That's awesome. What a beautiful mission. Were you always working in shelters and with dogs? Like, was that a kind of side volunteerism thing, or did you decide I want that to be like my job, my full-time commitment?
Right. Well, I didn't until I graduated college. I fostered through college. I grew up with a lot of animals. We lived in a rural area, so we always had exposure to a lot of pets and a lot of animals. And I really loved the animal world. And then, everybody's like, well, vet school's an option, but the biggest need that I really saw was trying to bridge the gap for these dogs that were being euthanized and really nobody knew about, or there wasn't an outlet for that. And people who were looking to adopt a dog and might not go to these rural counties, or, some of our shelters are still today located at the landfills, and it's just not a place that people go to look for them. So there was a huge need to get those dogs vetted, get them the medical services they need so that they are more desirable by people who are looking to adopt. Not that they're not desirable, but there's a lot of unknown sometimes when you're getting a dog that you don't really know the medical history or its temperament. And so getting that assessed and providing them with that care makes them more adoptable to the people in our community.
That makes sense. And I mean, the best way to start a business, or in this case, nonprofit, is to combine passion, and then you're also filling a
Yes.
need, right? Which is
Yes.
exactly, you have that passion and that love, and then you also saw a gap to fill. So both that personal connection and then that typical business market need that you need as well to succeed. So with Saving Grace, do you guys have fosters, or is it more go to the building to see the dogs? So say I'm someone listening, I'm like, oh, I might want to connect with you guys to adopt. What would that process kind of look like? Are there multiple ways to go about it?
So I'm on our old family farm, actually. So it's been in our family for 100 years. I was living there when I was working at the shelter here. And I just started fostering. Well, I fostered through college. And then after I was working at the shelter, I started bringing some dogs home because we were always so full, especially like mamas and puppies who might not be ready to wean yet and be available for adoption. So we have Saving Grace, and that's where all of the dogs that are available for adoption are. So we typically have about 80 on site, and those are dogs that are ready for adoption. And then we usually have around like 250 in foster. We have a huge foster program. It's really great. Over the years, it's really evolved into a really organized foster program. We have great leaders and mentors, all volunteer, who do that. And those are typically for the dogs who are either puppies that aren't old enough to be weaned yet, moms and pups, or either dogs that are going through some kind of medical care. So we get a lot of dogs that have some kind of, like an injury, or, maybe an injury that was left untreated for a while. And now they have, for dogs who might have like a minor eye infection that doesn't get treated over time, then, their eye, they lose vision. And so we have to take it out. And so that dog would be in a foster home until it was ready to come back for adoption. So we try to have the ones that people are coming and meeting with be ready, or at least be in the process of being ready to go home.
That makes sense. Those two kind of locations of dogs, if you will, make sense. I had no idea you guys had that many dogs.
We have that many dogs, and I turn away so many dogs. I turn away litters of really sweet adoptable puppies and really nice dogs every single day. There are still that many. So our fostering program is so important because they have to have, again, be weaned and have several vaccines as puppies to come back before they go home for adoption. So for us to be able to take in a litter of puppies, I have to have that foster open. So we have to have an available foster where they can stay until they're big enough to leave mom or have their vaccine. So fostering is huge. We hear it all the time, but it really is that life-saving piece that we have to have an open foster for those dogs before they can come to Saving Grace and be available. And our fosters do everything from, we get litters of 10 puppies that are going to take 8 to 10 weeks with a mom. I mean, it's an investment, a time investment for 2 to 3 months. And then we get a lot of these dogs, like, like I said, like with an eye removal or an amputation, who just need those 10 days to have a place to be, to recover from their surgery until they come back for adoption. So there's everything. There's so many ways for people to get involved. We also, we have our weekend hiking program where people can come out and do a hike that lasts about 2 hours. So we try to have lots of different options for people to help in whatever capacity they can to make a difference. And it takes everybody to see these dogs, through their adoption journey.
For sure. And I know with Saving Grace, you also have volunteer opportunities that don't require you to take home a dog, or don't you have volunteer opportunities where you don't even really need to interact? I'm just thinking
We
for
do.
folks who, might want to be like
Right.
very involved with the dogs versus help in different ways. Can you kind of explain some of those options?
It takes everything. So for an adoption journey, it takes all of the promotion. So to take their photos, to write a bio about them, to get them posted on the website. So it takes, website work, social media work. We do a lot of events, and a lot of that coordinating is before the actual event. So it's coordinating the volunteers, the signups, who's going to be there, who's going to transport the dogs, who's going to, be there to man our booth, and all of that. And all of that can be done off-site. So we do have a lot of people who do work full-time and then on the side volunteer, or maybe don't even come in at all. And those pieces are just as important as the people who are coming on site every day to do the actual dog care. So it's setting up the adoption appointments, answering all the emails, all of that sort of thing is really important in getting these dogs into their homes.
It's wonderful. You guys have so many options for people to support and help. Do you require that folks are local to the area? Are there any things that folks can do if they aren't in Wake Forest or Raleigh area?
If they can help, like with the social media is always a big thing. So, we have, say, volunteers that are on site and actually working with the dogs, but they might not be inclined to be able to do graphics or posts or turn like a video into something that we can post. So things like that is important that people can do offsite. And I always encourage people, because I know on a podcast, people can listen from anywhere, to go to your shelter and ask what they need also, because our needs are really different than somebody who might be in another state where they have different resources. So I always encourage people go to your shelter too and ask what they need.
That's a good point. And I mean, no matter where you live, there is definitely a shelter or some sort of animal organization that can use help. So that's a great shout out and great reminder for anyone listening. For Saving Grace specifically, where can people adopt from? So do you allow folks to drive from New Jersey, that's where my parents are, to come down and adopt a dog? Or like, what are the certain requirements?
They can come from wherever they want.
Okay.
So if you can come and you can get to us, you can adopt. So
nice.
It is the same for everybody. Our requirements are the same if you live close by or you live on the other side of the United States. If you're willing to make the investment and travel into us, then we would love for you to have a Saving Grace dog. So sometimes that might be 2 trips. If they choose a dog that's not spayed or neutered yet, or still needs some kind of medical care, they might need to come back. It just depends. Some people come and they want to only look at the dogs that are available today. And then some people don't mind making the second trip. So it just really depends. It depends on them. And different states have different requirements. So we usually tell them, look into what your state requires as far as if you need a health certificate or whatever you need to be able to come back into your state with that pet. So it just really depends on if they want to go through that. And we hope they do, because we have a lot of great dogs, and some states don't have the overpopulation problem that we have. So, we encourage people to make the time and come, choose a dog that otherwise won't have an adoption future.
Adopting is the most important thing, whether it's from Saving Grace or somewhere local where someone lives. But to your point, North Carolina has such that overabundance of adoptable dogs. So if folks are willing to come down, please do.
Yes. Yeah. And it is worth the visit. We have people often ask, well, do you ship them? It is absolutely worth taking the time, even if you're several states away, to go and visit any pet that you're looking at adopting or bringing into your home. We say this pet is hopefully going to be with you for the next 12 to 15 years. So you want one that you really connect with. And the website is great. The pictures are great, but it's not the same as meeting in person. Yeah. We say it's kind of like the dating website. You need to at least check them out a little bit before you make a commitment, and make sure that they're everything you thought they were through their picture online. So it's definitely worth making the trip, even if it's far away.
Totally agree. And I know we're getting into the weeds here, but do you all facilitate, say someone has a dog already? Like, would you let them come with their dog to meet the potential adopted dog?
We do. So we encourage people to bring their dog. with them. It's always best if they can bring another person with them if they have a dog. If they don't have someone else to bring, then we get a volunteer to help them. But a lot of times it's good to have the familiar dog come in with a familiar person, and then take the dog that the adopter's looking at, take them on a walk together with the other dog. And so, come into Saving Grace is new and different and overwhelming for a dog that's in a home. And so they're usually really nervous. So it's better if they can go on a walk away and kind of see how they are more relaxed together. And it's good for them to go home together too. So even if they have to come back, or if you take them home, we usually say, have someone else in the home meet you outside so that you're not walking a brand new dog into the new dog's home. Because even the nicest dogs, it's their territory, it's their home. And meeting in a neutral area and coming home together, walking back home together is always the best way to introduce.
And that's great that you guys facilitate some of that and even are just knowledgeable about that. That's so helpful for people who might already have dogs in their homes. That's great. So what does the farm look like? 80 dogs, you said, right? Try to help us paint a picture. What does that look like? What's going on at the farm?
So everybody has a crate. So everybody is in a crate to eat, and most of them are in a crate to sleep overnight. So there's multiple different play yards and play groups. And our shifts start at 7:30 in the morning. So our dog care starts at 7:30. So throughout the day, they're just rotated in and out into play groups. Some groups mix. Some groups kind of, for a lot of times older dogs might not want to be in a group of 10 teenage dogs. So we try to pair them well with dogs that are of similar size and personality and exercise needs so that they're more compatible, enjoy each other a little more. So they go out in different groups and they come back in to rest in their crate, and everyone eats in a crate, but they do get a lot of outdoor time too.
I can't imagine facilitating that. That is like,
it's
that's
a lot of coordinating who goes where.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know, you must not run into a lot of crazy scuffles with the dogs because you must just try to pair them
similar. Yes. And I work in the shelters evaluating the dogs before they come to Saving Grace.
Okay.
So I usually take a dog out with a couple of other dogs, or at least one other dog, and just look for those dogs who really enjoy the company of other dogs. Yeah. And they don't necessarily have to enjoy the company of another dog, but they have to be safe with other dogs and be able to commingle with them. So we certainly get dogs that, I think that they would be better or happier as an only dog. Like people are their thing more than other dogs. So, we definitely have those dogs, but we do also make sure that they're safe to be with other dogs, just so they can at least, have some housing mates until they get adopted.
Well, that's great because you guys are constantly learning about the personalities of the dogs. And that's so helpful when you go to adopt and you want to know as much as you can, right? So that's great. That's super helpful.
It typically takes them about 3 or 4 days after coming to Saving Grace to really not be nervous. They start to find playmates. Some arrive on the same day and they're ready to play. Like they just are here to have a good time.
For sure.
But the majority of them, they need to settle. They've been wherever they were living. Sometimes it wasn't a great place, but it was still their home. It was what they were used to. That was their environment and their comfort level. And then they're at a shelter typically for 3 to 5 days, maybe longer, just depending on if the shelter has room to hold them long term. So they settle in there and then they're moved to Saving Grace. So it's a lot of moving, and I really have to you have to admire the shelter dogs for being able to go through so much in such a short amount of time. And, we really encourage the adopters, when you take them home, just give them a few days to just decompress and learn this new place, because they don't know this is home yet. So definitely an adjustment period is to be expected to them.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. Imagine being forced to move around like once a week, right? And then,
with new people, every shift, you get breakfast and dinner with a different person. You get taken out every day by a different person every time. So it's a hard journey sometimes for a shelter dog.
For sure. But like I said, like you guys are learning so much about the dogs, and can probably inform potential owners of, hey, they do really well with change, or this is what they prefer. So again, that's always just so helpful when you're looking to adopt. And where do you all acquire the dogs from? I'm assuming local shelters, but do you have a process or not requirements, but like you look for certain dogs over others, or I don't know, what is that process like for Saving Grace?
So we don't really have a specific breed that we look for, more like what the temperament is and if they're going to be compatible and successful in our program, because we don't want to take them in if they're not going to be a good match for Saving Grace and the way that we can house them and care for them and adopt them out. So we work with about 20 different animal control shelters. There's about 10 of those that I'm really regularly visit every week typically. And it really depends on how many dogs we get adopted. So for every dog at Saving Grace that gets adopted, that means a dog from a shelter who is facing a euthanasia option has a spot to come to us. If we have 30 adoptions this week, then we can take more from those shelters who have, are overcrowded. So it really just depends. And we try to partner with the shelter and kind of help them if they get really overcrowded. Sometimes we can reach out to our fosters and say, hey, this shelter is so overcrowded, so many really, really nice dogs this week. That would be a Saving Grace candidate if you could just foster them for a week until they can get here. So we do work with the most rural shelters in North Carolina, a few in South Carolina, but we really focus on the shelters that have the least options for resources and the highest number of dogs coming in. So that way we're serving a population that is in the greatest need and really does depend on us as their only option for a chance.
So I'm still mind blown at the amount of dogs you're able to help on a daily basis. Like, that is so amazing. That is wild. It's a lot of dogs.
It's a lot of dogs.
What is the average shelter? How many dogs would you say they have? Do you have like an estimate?
I would say 50 to 100.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys have
populations are turning over pretty quickly.
Sure.
So they have dogs that they have to house, like for cruelty investigations that might be there for a few weeks, or some even might be there a month or more. But the majority of the population is coming in and out fairly quickly.
I wanted to go back to fostering a little bit. I know we talked about that. I wanted to ask you if you had advice for folks who might be interested in fostering, but can't get over but I'll just want to keep the dog. And I'm asking this selfishly because that's my husband. Granted, we do have 2 dogs right now, so I don't know if we'd foster now, but I'd love to eventually in my life. And he's just like, I would keep them all. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I know why. Like, I feel I have my why behind fostering, but what would you say to someone like him?
Right. Well, and it's kind of the same that all the volunteers feel at Saving Grace. People are always like, well, how do you let them go? Because there's somebody who is waiting for that dog to move into a home who will otherwise be euthanized. So when that spot opens up, that means that dog is going to get a chance who otherwise would not. So a lot of our fosters have learned to have that mindset. I think your first few fosters you get really attached to because, it's new and you haven't gotten used to this, but then you see that they go on and they get adopted. And then there's another one that you can help because that one got adopted. So we try to go over that at orientation and say, fostering is really a bridge for a dog that has no one and no future to a home, a loving home that's forever. So, some fosters, they just put, I think, all of their time into raising their puppies and really doing everything for that dog, training them a lot of times, put a lot of their time into it. And then there's others who just have like a quiet place for them to rest and hang out. And, we say that's okay, because what you did was give them a chance to recover. They might not know tricks and commands and all of that some of our other fosters put in, but it's really just having that bridge for them to have a safe, healthy, happy spot until they can make it to their forever adopters who can then take that dog on as their own and make it part of their family. And they open a spot up to another one. We also have a really great sleepover program. Every weekend we have pickups on Friday night, and then you bring your dog back on Sunday night or either Monday at noon. That's right before our adoptions start. So some people really like doing that because it's not a long-term investment. It's not a few weeks.
Yeah.
It's just a couple of nights. And it gives the dog a chance to get out and really into a home, which gives us a whole lot more information about it. So how are they inside? How are they on a leash in a neighborhood? Some people take them all over to hikes, sporting events, and everything. Some people just want a dog that's going to hang out on the couch, which is fine. They give us a little information about what they're looking for, and they get matched with that dog. So for some people who might not have a longer commitment or be worried about how hard it's going to be to bring the dog back at first, that's a really great place to start. And that really helps our dogs, gives us information about them. And then it gives the new adopter that we can pass on information about them. So that makes a big difference too. And that's really popular in our community.
I love all the programs you have, like the hiking one, the sleepover. It's really cool. You guys are way more than what the average person might think a dog rescue would be.
Right.
That's awesome. That's such a good idea.
We try to reach a lot of different people and get our dogs really seen, I would say, because people just a lot of times don't think about how many dogs are in a shelter and how many really nice, great dogs are at a shelter. So getting them out and about, and also at the same time getting that information about them, really helps everybody.
Just to clarify, you guys just do dogs, right? No cats.
Yes. I know. Okay. I love cats, but we just don't have a facility for it. One day I'm going to have a cat cafe.
All right. Well, there you go.
I love those.
Yeah, that answers my my question of where do you want to take Saving Grace? Cats. That's where you want to take it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, pivoting a little bit to kind of the business side a little bit. So with running a nonprofit, I'm just curious, kind of a broader question to start. Any immediate thoughts top of mind, folks who might be listening who either want to start their own business or their own nonprofit, any top pieces of advice you'd give, or, hey, think about this, or I went through this is important to keep top of mind, just kind of the first few things that pop into your mind when you reflect on your journey with Saving Grace?
It was years before I could have a paid person. So, I really loved it. So that was part of, why I wanted to get into it. Certainly not, I didn't know that I would be in it for a whole career, but, I just started raising awareness and raising some funds for dogs that I knew that were in need, and, started really small. And it's also given people a way to contribute, because a lot of people don't know, I think, the need that's out there. We can help as many dogs as we have funding and resources for. So if we get a large donation, we can help more dogs. And what we do now is really just what I did it's on a much bigger scale now than when I first started 20 years ago. But it was saying, okay, I have these 5 really nice dogs and they need this, they need spay, neuter, heartworm treatment. These are the things that they're going to need. This is what it's going to cost. And then establishing relationships and kind of educating people about the need and giving people the opportunity to be able to help these dogs. Because a lot of people want to if they know about it. They just don't know necessarily about it. So I think making those relationships and then maintaining them so that they can also be somebody to go out and say, this is a big need. This is the difference you can make by supporting Saving Grace.
Sounds like there's all the business side, right? Which, like you mentioned, funding and just running logistics day to day. And then there's also the, really like any business, the marketing, the education, the getting out in the community. It's just, instead of, you're not selling a product, you're helping animals. Like, you just have a different type of mission, different goal, I guess you'd say. What I heard strongly in your answer was the education piece too, just helping folks understand how to support, why it's important. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I love the different ways that folks can support Saving Grace, because I think at least for me, sometimes you think, well, I can't take a dog into my home and I'm not looking to adopt. So what can I do? Right. But you can do a lot. And kind of on that point, how can folks who are listening who are not in North Carolina, how can they help? How can they help virtually? How can they donate? Like, what are some of those easy things that folks listening can do to support as they're listening to this episode?
So we have really great social media that's fun to follow. So on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, it's Saving Grace NC. And we do post a lot of the stories. We don't post nearly as many stories as we have. I mean, every dog coming through has a story, but I think ongoing sponsorship too. Like we have a sponsorship program where people can donate monthly that really helps us be able to be in a place where when those dogs do come through that need care, we can say yes to those dogs. So about 95% of the dogs coming in have never had any medical care at all. So we start at square zero with these dogs. You know, they have usually had nothing. So vaccines, spay, neuter. We have a lot that are heartworm positive. That cost us an additional $1,000 per dog. So that is a big undertaking. You know, that's not something that most shelters can treat, but we want to choose dogs that are appropriate candidate for saving grace, that are going to be a successful adoption based on their personality and their fit as a really great family dog, not just because, well, they don't need a lot of medical care we can't afford. So we want to be able to bring that dog in and say, we can give you your medical care that's, you know, treatable, because a lot of what we get in is treatable. It's just, you know, a lot of times it's from neglect. So there might be severe parasites or skin issues or things like that that are just from lack of care. So we can treat those things and then place those dogs into a home, and they're going to live a really great, healthy life. So people, you know, can donate to that cause, whether it's an ongoing support, you know, an ongoing sponsorship, or they just want to sponsor one dog. You know, sometimes we'll have a dog that needs a certain surgery, and we put that out there and hope to find a sponsor for that. And we usually do, depending on how much care that dog needs. But a lot of times it's multiple people that come together and make a donation to sponsor that dog. So you can also sponsor a dog and we will name it after someone. We do that at Father's Day and Mother's Day. So name a dog after your mom or dad.
Yeah.
So we try to come up with different creative ways that people can sponsor, but we are donation only. We run off of all donations. There's no county or government funding. So it's all on what support comes our way. And, you know, we have great people and great processes to provide that care. It just, again, depends on the funding that we get, on the impact we can make.
So it sounds like people can donate and, of course, go to your website to see all the volunteer options as well.
All the donation options are there. So all the donation options are on the website. We also have a program where they can donate stocks, or several different ways there they can donate.
Okay, excellent. And do you guys have a list that people can shop from to buy items as well?
We do. We have an Amazon wish list. We have Amazon, and Walmart is on there also. And then we also have a store at Saving Grace. We have a small store by Saving Grace Supply Co. And they can make a donation through there, and we buy the food wholesale.
Excellent. And I'll put all these links in the episode description too, so folks can easily get to them. Yeah, thanks for shouting out, because I know folks listening will want to know how they can help. Just a handful more questions, Molly. So are there any dogs currently that, well, this might be a hard question because they might get adopted, but are there any dogs that you want to highlight, just to shout out? And if they're adopted by the time this episode comes out, then yay. But any dogs you want to particularly shout out that are available right now?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there are so many. There's so many. I had my mama dog. She was found in a suitcase with her puppies. You're local. I don't know if you heard of that story. It was about 3 months ago. Yeah, so she's still looking for her home. Her name is Sammy, short for Samsonite, but she was abandoned, zipped up in a suitcase with her 5 little puppies. So all 5 of her puppies have been adopted. So Mama Sammy is still waiting for her home. She's really lovely. So we hope to find her a home very soon.
Excellent. Well, everyone check out Sammy if you're looking for a dog. Nice shout out. One quick personal question. How many animals do you have running around in your own home, Molly?
I have 5 dogs and 3 cats.
Nice.
So 5 dogs and 3 cats. Yep. And then we have 5 goats at Saving Grace. So nice. We love our farm animals too.
Nice. That's awesome. Any other farm animals or just goats right now?
Well, I have a couple cows.
Okay.
And we have 1 potbelly pig.
Wow, nice. Do they
Little
interact with
menagerie.
the dogs at all, or they just
No,
roam?
no,
No, just their own space.
their own space. Yep.
That's awesome. Very nice. You truly live on a beautiful farm then. That's awesome.
Yes.
Those were my primary questions, Molly. I could talk to you forever about dogs and saving dogs and helping dogs. Maybe you can come back on if you'd like later.
Sure. I'd be happy to.
But yeah, that'd be awesome. But this is a great introductory episode to Saving Grace. And before we log off, right now, in this moment, what would you say is your proudest accomplishment? And it might be related to Saving Grace and dogs, or maybe it's something else. Just kind of that first thing that comes to mind of your proudest accomplishment so far.
I would say definitely being able to not only give dogs a home, which I really started out with the mission of, why are we just wasting so many dogs that are such great pets that are literally just going into our landfills? What they could get a home, but over the years, I see how much they also bring to people. A lot of people who need a dog, like need more than a dog, but need a real friend or a real companion, or, people who have later written me and said, my husband died the week before. I literally could not leave my house and I had to get out and walk my dog. And I didn't really see that side of it at first. I was kind of going into the mission like, oh, these dogs need us, and why do they never even get a chance for people to see them, and let's make that happen. But also seeing how special they are to people and what they go on to bring to a lot of our community, and the adopters, and also the people that come to Saving Grace, the volunteers. They become such a community. We say we have our Saving Grace village, but there are a lot of people that maybe move into town or do lose a spouse, or don't have a big family, and they come to Saving Grace and they make different friends there, really great friends, and have a Saving Grace family to come to. So, the people side has been, a whole nother experience. That's a whole nother show, right? We have a lot of passionate, wonderful volunteers, and managing everyone sometimes has been new things to learn. But it's been really great to see how many people come together and have a Saving Grace family. And I think how much the people have come into it just as much as saving the dogs.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful answer, because it sounds like you started out for the dogs and still very much are, but then slowly grew this appreciation for the people behind Saving Grace and the adopters. And it seemed like it expanded way beyond the dogs in such a beautiful, heartwarming way. And that's such a great answer. That's a great reflection.
And I see so many of our shelter people, it's really a tough job. People say, well, I could never work at the shelter because I love animals too much. And it's the people that love animals more than anything that are vulnerable enough to go into a shelter and work and love these animals that they may have to euthanize later. And, people don't really think about that piece of it. But a lot of times they are the only people that this animal has a good positive experience with. And people work there that love animals enough to say, I'm going to show them at least the compassion and good care while they're in my care. And I try to share my side from Saving Grace to a lot of those shelter workers, because they don't necessarily see the numbers going home that we do. We see the good side of them going home, and a lot of the, happy tales, and they don't necessarily see that. So I try to share that all the time and say, here's the dog that you really love that's in a happy home now. So I'm lucky at Saving Grace that I get to see just how many good people come and show up for the dogs.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it takes a selfless person to right? Like you said, someone might be treating a dog that gets euthanized a week later, and it's putting your own emotions aside to help, like you said, help the dog while they're here, while they're still here. So
and it's not their, it's not their fault. They're cleaning up. Our shelters are cleaning up a problem from our community. They are not the creators. You always hear people saying, well, the shelter euthanized this dog, and well, they're cleaning up the problems of the community. So they are there to handle the dogs that no one else is going to or will. So, that is a tough spot. So, being able to go in and say, how can I help you? And that's where, earlier I said, call your shelter and say, or go visit your shelter. Even better, just go visit your shelter and say, what do you really need? Because, we might need dog food, or we might have all the dog food that we can store sometimes. And there might be something like office supplies that people that are donating to a shelter don't necessarily think about, but it takes those supplies too. Those are just as important to keep up with everybody, keep everything organized, their records, their adoption packets ready. So, always reaching out and saying, hey, I would like to help you guys. What do you need help with? Because until you actually work in it, you might not know what they really need.
And you're
highlighting the world to them just to know that somebody, cares enough to say, I want to help you.
For sure. Yeah. And you're highlighting all those ways you can help. Like if you don't have the time, then you can donate monetarily. If you don't have the money, you can donate your time or in other ways. So just highlighting all the ways that you can support that people might not think about. Thank you so much, Molly, for being on. Again, we could talk for hours, I'm sure. Yeah. And thank you for sharing your story, your passion, your mission behind Saving Grace. Where can people who are listening find you guys, your website, your social medias, kind of shout everything out?
So Saving Grace NC, that's our Instagram, our Facebook, and our TikTok. And then our website is savinggracenc.org. You can get all the information there. And we do have a little Airbnb too by Saving Grace. So we had touched on, it's the Saving Grace Cottage. They can see that link on our website also. But for people who do want to come from out of town to look at dogs, we have that. So if they want to take a dog home for the night, they can take a dog for a little spend the night, make sure it works, or, have a place to stay and take their dog after they adopted. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You guys have thought of everything. That's really cool.
It's taken a while. Over the years, we've figured out, how to, kind of mainstream the experience.
That's awesome. Yeah, you keep popping up with new things you guys got going on. That's awesome. But again, Molly, thanks so much for being on, and hope to have you on again. And like I said, thank you for sharing your story, and thanks for being on Virtual Coffee.